The 3 biggest problems with your band workouts and how you can fix them. With many of us stuck at home, band fitness workouts have become really popular, but most people are doing them wrong. Here is why. Bands are definitely good pieces of equipment. They're light, they're quite cheap, they're portable, they don't make noise that disturbs your neighbors, they're safe, you can't drop them on your toe and get injured. So that makes them good. But most people are using them wrongly, unscientifically, and worst of all, they're not getting good results. In this video, I'll explain why and also how to overcome the disadvantages of bands so you get all the benefits without wasting time. The first big mistake in band workouts is that most of these workouts use the band as the main source of resistance. I have a problem with that because it doesn't make sense. You see, bands are not the same resistance all the way through the band. Most bands are made in the same factory, they're just relabeled with different brands. So they're about the same, okay? So when you look at the manufacturer's sites, they list the tension of the bands, and each thickness of band has certain tensions. The range of tension is incredibly large. A small band has something like between 9 and 16 kilograms of tension. That means when it starts to have tension, it's about 9 kilos. When it's fully stretched, it's 16. That's like an 80% increase in difficulty throughout the range of the band. The problem with this is that almost no exercise or movement has this great variability. For example, if you do a push-up, okay? At the bottom, it's a bit harder, right? Most people can't get off the floor if they're too weak. Okay, maybe they can finish at the top. The difference in difficulty is maybe 20%. The same thing for a squat. At the bottom of the squat, it's a bit harder. At the top, it's a bit easier. Maybe 20%. But it's not 80% harder. So when you use a band as your main source of resistance, the difference in difficulty throughout the movement is too big. So either one end will be much too difficult or one end will be much too easy. So you're wasting a lot of your effort when you're going through the whole motion. A lot of the motion will be either too hard or too easy for your current fitness level. You're wasting your time. The second major problem with most band workouts is that people use the band for all the exercises. Bands are not good for all exercises. Now I'll explain why. When you're pushing, like a push-up or a squat where you're standing up, you're pushing against the floor to extend your body straight. Okay? The exercise tends to be hard when you're fully contracted, and it's easy when you're fully extended. Right? So you can't push off the floor because you're fully stuck, but when you're finishing, it's easier. So the band adds difficulty to the easy part. It makes the exercise consistently difficult. So when you do a push-up, you put a band behind your back and you push, the band extends, and near the top where it's easier, the band makes it harder. So the exercise is difficult all the way through, which is good value for your time because each rep becomes more challenging, and for each second that you're doing exercise, you're getting more challenge into your body. That means your result will generally be better. When you're squatting at the bottom, maybe you can't get out of the bottom position. But with a band, the band is so slack at the bottom, it doesn't matter. But as you extend and stand up straight, the band gets tighter and tighter and tighter, increasing the difficulty and adding difficulty to the easy part, which is the part where you're almost straight. So when your body's extending, bands can be a good addition to the exercise you're already doing. But many people add bands to everything. They add bands to rows. When you do a row, you pull something, right? Where do people find it difficult? When you first start pulling, or when you have to fully squeeze your back at the top? Of course, it's when you fully squeeze your back. But when people add bands to rows, they make the fully squeezed position even harder. When people can't even get there in the first place, it's already the hardest part of the exercise. And you make it even harder with a band. That doesn't make sense. And it goes against the way our nervous system works, against the way our anatomy works. So that is an unscientific way to use bands. So I don't just add bands to everything. I need to think about how the movement actually works with the anatomy of the body. In sports science, this is called a strength curve of the exercise. That means at which point of the exercise is it easier and which point is it harder. The third and final problem with most band exercises is that bands are quite difficult to get consistently the same tension, even when you're doing the same movement. If I pick up a 5 kilo dumbbell, now, next week, and 200 years from now, 5 kilos will still be 5 kilos. But a band, if you're adjusting it all the time, and you're stepping a bit closer, or a bit further, or you're stepping or pulling on the band, attaching it at a slightly different angle or slightly different position, that will change the stretch, and the variability is quite a lot. You could be changing 10, 20 or even 30% of the resistance just by where you step on the band or how you attach it. This much variability gives you no consistency in your training, and it's going to be hard to know how to progress. If you don't know what weight exactly you used last week, how do you know what you're trying to improve to this week? You have no idea, and it's very difficult to make consistent long-term progress if you don't know what you did. Now you understand 3 of the big problems with using bands as your main training method. Now I'm going to show you how to use bands in combination and in smart ways so that you don't encounter these problems and you get the best benefit from your training with bands. Here are 3 ways I correctly use bands when I'm designing band workouts for people like you at home. The first principle is that I don't use bands as the main source of resistance. I use them to add difficulty during easy parts of the exercise. Here are some examples. Here's an example of using a band correctly for a leg exercise. We're gonna do split squats, okay? But split squats are hard at the bottom and easier at the top. And we're gonna use the band to make it harder at the top. So, the top position, we want our body to come up and backwards. Going down, we go down and forwards. So, the band should be connected to something near the floor. You can connect it to any solid surface. Now, the band doesn't even have to be very heavy because this is an addition to the body weight. It's not used as the main resistance like we talked about as one of the problems of band training. We're adding it to the difficulty already there because of our body weight. So as you can see, there's tension at the top. When I go down, the tension gets less. The exercise actually gets easier because the band is less tight. Now, this is actually the hardest part of the exercise, coming out from this position. But the band is relaxed, so I can do it. Now as I come up, the band gets harder and harder and harder to pull. So in this case, the band is following the exercise strength curve correctly. It's making the exercise harder when the exercise is actually too easy for you. So for split squats, you can add bands. It's the correct way to use a band for exercise. I'm going to show you an example of the wrong way to use bands. In this example, we're using bands for rows. Okay, a common way that you see people do band workouts for rows, they step on the band. Firstly, you don't know exactly how far you're stepping, in or out, changing the tension completely, okay? Look what I have to do when I do a row. The band here is super tight already, but if I let it go some more, it will be completely no tension, so I gotta have some tension. But now it's already got tension. What happens when I come up? The hardest part of the exercise, I haven't even reached it yet. But I can't even get there because the band gets so hard. So with a band, the difference in tension is so great, I can't even get to the most effective part of the exercise where my elbow is up and my back is fully contracted. This makes band use for rows a bad idea. Another bad idea is when you connect the band to the dumbbell. It's the same thing, making the exercise harder at the top. There's no point adding bands to rows. The second way I like to use bands is that I like to use the band to educate the body how to use the right muscles. So I'm not using the band as a main source of resistance. I'm using it at a different angle so that the body does the exercise in a more effective way and feels the correct muscles better. Remember the other way you can use bands properly for exercise? You can use them to stimulate the right muscles and help the brain turn on the right muscles. Here we're going to use the band to turn on our glute muscles more effectively for a step up. One problem with step-ups is that many people forget to contract their buttocks tightly and fully when they reach the top position. But we can solve that problem using a band. As you can see here, I've attached a band at about chest level. The reason is that when I step up onto the chair, this will be about the level of my hips. Okay? So I want to attach it at about chest or shoulder level. So when, depending on the height of my chair, when I step onto it, the band will be at my hip level. This band will pull me backwards, just a little bit. As you can see, it's not a very thick band. I mean, it's not designed to give your buttocks more resistance or your legs more resistance. It's designed to pull you backwards slightly so that your brain has the thought to pull you forward by contracting your glutes at the top. Okay? This gives you a more precise control over your muscles and more feeling in the glutes at the point where they need to be contracted more fully. And it's also a way to correct a common mistake or a common thing that people forget during the exercise. And of course, when your muscles learn to contract more fully, The nervous system is better at controlling the muscle. The muscles have been shown to develop bigger and also stronger. So the band goes across your body in front of your waist. And we're going to do the same glute training step up that you have seen in maybe some other videos. But now the band is pulling me backwards, especially when I get to the top. So my buttocks will need to contract fully at the top to shift my hips forward and complete the movement. So I cannot ever forget to squeeze the glutes at the top to contract them fully. So it looks like this. The band has some tension now. But here, when I step up, the tension will get more, and it's just enough to remind myself that I need to contract the glutes at the top. Lean forward, hands on hips, squeeze. Lean forward, squeeze. Lean forward, squeeze. The final way I like to use bands is I use them for isometric exercises. Means you're holding the band at a fixed tension. In this way, you're not subject to the band's property of having such a wide variance of resistance. At this distance, at this attachment, the band is fixed at this resistance. Now I'm going to use the band in one of the ways I suggested, which is to use the band for isometric holds. That means the muscle is not moving, it's just holding a fixed position. I'm going to use the band for isometric holds for muscles of my middle back. In particular, the lower trapezius, okay, which is somewhere, in the middle back right here. The way to train it is to put your arms in a Y shape and push them backwards while keeping your shoulder blades down. The band is pretty good for this because if you use a band in an isometric, no movement hold, it can put tension on those muscles and you can hold it there without getting into any of the negative effects of using a band. The tension is great for this muscle right at that position. I'll show you how to do it now. To do this exercise, I put my hands inside the band and the band is about the level of my arms when they're fully extended out. Okay? My thumbs, you'll notice, point backwards. That way you get more activation of the lower trapezius muscles. So in this one, you're pulling the band this way and backwards, okay? Y shape, chest up, torso doesn't move, and you're pulling the band backwards and you're holding it. The band is trying to spring you forward and close your arms. So you're trying to keep the Y shape and pull it backwards. And you hold this position in tension. Now, the band is not moving, so you're not getting any of the change of resistance. You're just holding this position, all the muscles are tense, and then you can hold it and you can get a good workout using the band and without any of the band's disadvantages by using isometric holds for exercises like this. From this video, I hope you learned some important principles about using bands for training. And I hope you understand why most of the workouts using bands are wasting time and are not working effectively for the user. I don't like to see you waste time, I like to see you get results. If you like this video, please subscribe and like my channel. I look forward to making more science-based content for you.